Inshallah, this is a series of program called the Arab Spring, and we covered so far the when starting Tunisia, we spoke about Syria, we spoke about Iraq, and the last week we spoke about Egypt. Now let's move today to North Africa and Al-Maghrib, and that is in Libya. Libya, North Africa is always including Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, the Great Maghrib, what we say, Al-Maghrib Al-Arabi. Inshallah, as usual, we have our guest, Abu Bashir. Jazallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Inshallah, you are okay, inshallah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everybody is okay. We have just today, there will be, inshallah, the brother Wasim Ishaq has passed away, and today is his funeral service in Didsbury Mosque. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, shower his soul with his mercy and forgiveness, give him the highest firdaus, inshallah, in paradise, and give his family and friends patience and great reward. And of course, we pray to Allah to cure all those people who have been infected with the pandemic or other illnesses. Ameen. Inshallah, Abu Bashir, Jazakumullah khair for joining. And today we, Brother Abu Bashir, as Alhamdulillah, we spoke before and we present him, but there's no problem to repeat his introduction. Abu Bashir is well known in the Manchester community. He has been for a long time as well, originally from Syria, but educated, brought up and here in Britain as well. And he, from an engineering degree, he went in business, and he was involved in community, as I said, in the SACRI, Standing Advisory Body for Religious Education. And of course, he set up his own business as a shop, Word of Islam, in Rocholm, and he was selling Islamic books and doing da'wah as well. And he is a khatib as well in a Friday prayer, one of the rare khatibs who speak as well, beautiful Arabic as well, and English, as you know. By most majority of people who come to khutbahs, usually they don't understand Arabic or other minority languages. So therefore, alhamdulillah, from the 80s, we introduced English, and alhamdulillah, in some mosques now they do Arabic and community language, plus the Arabic and English as well, which is very relevant. And he actually now has a series of talks online as well, on Zoom as well. He has like a study circle covering the history of Islam and everything. And inshallah, we might actually speak about that at the end of our program, inshallah. Then those people want to know more about Islamic studies and Islamic history as well. As today, the 17th of March, we remember the death of Ibn Khaldun, rahmatullah alayh, the founder of the social sciences. And inshallah, we might have a nice talk about Ibn Khaldun and his theories about economics and everything. May Allah bless him as well. With a very nice book he left us, the Muqaddimah, who he wrote it in 6 months as well. Okay, Brother Abu Bashir, this is an introduction. Jazakallah. I took some time anyway to come. We talk about today about Libya, the Arab Spring, as you know. And let's, inshallah, give time to our guest speaker, inshallah. And if you have any questions, please go to the admin at Radio Hajj Online and send us your questions, inshallah. We can answer them at the end or actually next week as well. تفضل يا شيخ أبو بشير.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. The Arab Spring, as we spoke before, is an attempt by the Arab populations in different countries, and almost in all the Arab countries, to break out from the prisons that the dictators have put us in for the past 100 years. To break out from poverty, injustice, no equal opportunities. Actually, there are no opportunities at all in the Arab world. That's why everybody is trying to immigrate. It started in Tunisia, we said in 2010, and then within December 2010, then within a few days, it spread to Egypt. Then the third country that caught the wind of that spring, or the breeze of the spring, was Libya. Libya probably was one of the worst Arab countries that suffered from its dictator. And to be honest, when we present the history of our dictators, it's difficult to choose number one. They're always competing for number one, who is the worst. But I would say Gaddafi at the time, although now Assad of Syria has beaten him to number one, but Gaddafi at the time was number one in oppression and wasted resources, revenues, and opportunities. Gaddafi came to power in Libya by a military coup in September 1969. Mm-hmm. He was a young man, he was only 27 years old. Somehow he managed, he took the king at the time by surprise. The king was an old man and the system, and he became president, although he didn't call himself president, he called himself the brother, the leader, al-akh al-qa'id.
Right.
So, but he was the president, and for the next 42 years.
Therefore, he took over from Senussi, yeah?
From Senussi, from the king Idris Senussi.
Yes.
And we had hope in him, actually, because he came with big plans of no corruption, development of the country.
No, brother Abu Bashir, can I just ask you a question about quickly, about the King Idris al-Senussi? How was Libya under his rule?
Libya under his rule was not too bad, neither it was very good. You see, all Arab leaders, whether they are good or bad, unfortunately, none of them had a vision how to develop the country. No plan. No plans whatsoever. So this Senussi, although he was old, but he was surrounded by younger people. His crown prince, the prime minister, the ministers. So when he became ruler after the liberation from the Italian colonialists in the 1960, I think, about almost 1960 or late 50s, okay, the country was very poor. I must say, it was very, very poor. Within 2-3 years, they struck the petrol. They found the petrol. And so the country has some good revenues. The population of the country at that time was only 2 million. It's a large country, almost 2 million square kilometers. So they had no plan. And then, because they had no plan, the bad people around him, they made sure that they have helped themselves. And that's what's happening throughout the Arab countries. So there was a little bit of development. There was, I mean, it wasn't too corrupt compared to now. It's heaven compared to now. But so the country has improved a little bit. It was, plus because the Italians left, it wasn't long ago before when the Italians left, they left it a nice, tidy country in some areas. I must say, we'll come to this now later on. Because you see, the colonialists, what they did develop some quarters of the city center, right? And some good quality roads to take you from the city to the borders.
Therefore,
these are all military roads.
Okay, to serve their own interests.
Their own interests. That is the same thing. The roads that they built in Jordan 100 years ago were better than the roads that they're building now. The same goes for everywhere, Syria, Iraq, and you'll find the roads always going from the city, from the capital to the borders, east, west, where it is. That's it. But they don't develop anything else. Anyway, so it was okay. I mean, there is a saying that the Libyans remember that Zayed, the father of the present ruler of the Arab Emirates, he visited Tripoli in the 1960s. It was very nice, a beautiful city, and I'll show you some photos of it later. He said, I wish Dubai was like that city, right? But anyway, if you look at it now, you will say that you will see it's a different country altogether. So this Gaddafi came, and suddenly, well, he was good for the first few years, I must admit. He was a good man. He was anti-Israel. He threw out the Italians, the American bases, their military bases. So he did one or two positive things. And then suddenly something happened to him. I don't know what happened. He 180 degrees turned back, and he became one of the worst dictators that we have witnessed. In his time, actually, he was the worst. He started now running the country like a madman. He had dreams, he had plans which could not be executed in this country with a small population. He wanted to make Libya an industrial country, a superpower, a nuclear power. All these type of dreams, he pursued them and spent millions on them. But he didn't give any care to the infrastructure of the country, to education, medicine, no, nothing. This was not in his mind at all, only big projects. And as he was going along with this, the distance between him and the people were getting further and further. And of course, to keep himself in power, him and those cronies around him, they had to use the heavy stick. They have to control the people by imprisonment, by severe punishment one way or another. That led to many Libyans to actually leave the country. And yes, he encouraged that. Whoever wanted to leave the country, he was welcome. So most
they became refugees.
Yeah, well, not quite, to be honest. No, politically, not quite. They were just leaving to Europe and for a better life, really.
For economic, yeah.
Well, to be honest, they were running away from a very bad situation. There were no opportunities.
From persecutions and all this kind of thing.
I cannot call them refugees. If you look at in England, I remember a few years ago, the statistics says that there were 3,000 Libyan doctors in England.
So,
right? So these are not refugees who want to live in tents and throw themselves in the seas, high seas, like we see now. These people were running away really from the situation. The thousands of people that they went out for education, to pursue further education, they never came back.
I understand, yes.
They applied as political refugees. That's different than as economical refugees, like what's happening now with the Syrians or the other Muslims who run away from their countries, or the Africans. Those are people who are starving, but those people who are really running away for their own safety and for opportunities as well. Right? So let's go through now prepare some PowerPoint about the Libyan situation before, during, and after Gaddafi.
Yes. Go.
So we start with this picture of Gaddafi.
Yes.
This is probably 1 or 2 years before he left. If you can see his face, you can see it's very, very evil face, really. A disturbed man, very disturbed. And there's something definitely wrong with him. But anyway, so this guy, and he was, amongst the things that he was doing all the time is always changing his costume, dressed here like an old
Can you click on slideshow, make it a slide to have a full screen.
All right.
Go to slideshow, do a slideshow.
But I want to see the, okay, slideshow, right. Okay, I'll do that. Slideshow.
Yeah, do the slide. We go through the slide from the beginning. Yes,
are you happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Right. So this is Gaddafi. I mean, that's what he looks like. And as I said earlier, he had a habit of changing his costume in a very strange way every now and then. Here, dressed like an African old woman, right, with Obama. And then this is Libya. This is Tripoli.
Yes, the capital.
Tripoli. This is Tripoli in the 1960s.
Capital, yeah.
The capital, yeah, the capital of Libya. Look, it was nice, beautiful city. I went to Libya in 1974. It was almost like this, right? Wherever you walk in Tripoli, it was a beautiful city, right? So this Tripoli in the 1960s, right? And he took over 1969. Now this is Tripoli during Gaddafi's time. You could say it looks, mashallah, it looks good. No, but that is this picture, what you see here. is a typical capital of dictators in the third world. What you see beautiful roads, right, with a lot of trees and modern buildings. Like you see this building on the right here.
Yes.
There are about half a dozen buildings. This is only for the king or the ruler and his guests to see. Once you walk 1 mile away from there, you will see different world.
It's like you are in another country.
This is, yeah, a different world altogether, really, right? So we saw that picture there. Now we look at Libya during his time, what happened. Look at this here. Look at how the people living. There is no spaces between houses. There is no places for car parks. There is no parks at all.
No planning whatsoever.
In this area, about 2 million people live. You can count the trees, about 6-7 trees, right? I mean, I was just comparing it yesterday to a poor town in England called Bolton, right? I just looked a random area of it. 25% of the area was a green area.
Subhanallah.
Right? Okay, well, it doesn't rain there as much as, but we could see the difference between that picture during the Italians or in the 60s and this one. So people were just building houses next to each other and living like as if they were products, as just some boxes, right? Now, this is before the revolution, so there was no war. This scene here, I've seen it in my own eyes when I went to Libya in 2014. This is not far away from a street called Omar al-Mukhtar in the city center.
Omar al-Mukhtar is a great leader who fought the Italian occupation.
Yes, so there's a main road in Tripoli called Omar al-Mukhtar. This is about half a mile from it, away from it. Look at the houses there. Look at the roads. Gaddafi did not do any maintenance for the country for 42 years. No maintenance. Look at it. Can you imagine? This is the capital of one of the richest or the best, one of the main producers of oil for 40 years, 42 years. This is how he did the country. How he did with the country. No maintenance whatsoever. No planning. Just left people do your own. Look at that. I mean, I know there is a military vehicle here banned, but look at the roads. Those roads, when you walk in Tripoli, that's the capital, you will find them similar. The roads that have been built about 100 years ago, no maintenance. Look at the standard of building, right? This house has been destroyed by civil war, I must admit, after Gaddafi's gone. But it's not far away from that house which was not destroyed. You understand? So this man, as I said, as if it's nonsense, as he wasn't living there. It's nothing to do with him. This is what happened in the civil war as well, which he left, or probably during the war between him and the rebels, those who rebelled against him. We will come to that. So people had enough, and people, actually, the Arabs wanted to break out. They had many attempts. The Libyans, I must admit, the Libyans, the Syrians, Jordanians, everybody attempted to get rid of their governments, but they were met with live firing, thousands imprisoned, and thousands were killed in prison. Right? And this Gaddafi was so criminal that in one day he executed 100 prisoners. And he made sure it was in Ramadan, and they were executing them live or hanging them live on TV at the time of iftar. So the people had enough of it. When they saw that the revolution succeeded in Tunisia and in Egypt, all they had to do is persevere and stand up to the police and the military force. And whether they won or not, they had enough. So they decided to go out, right, at any cost. You could see millions of them went out, right? Libya, with a small population, 5 million now, as I said, when Gaddafi took over, it was only 2 or 2.5 million. Thus, the people they saw nothing with this. Where is the money gone?
No, that's what, 5 million, I have now the GDP. I can give you some data. You said about 2013, the GDP of Libya was 65.5 billion dollar. Yes. And I go to when it went to the minimum 2016, 26 billion was because most of the money was coming from oil production and selling it. And this is, I think I have some data here. 2018 is about, now is up to 52.6 billion.
Well, because again of the war, the oil production has become less and less,
and the oil price went down as well.
Yeah. Anyway, now this guy as well, he not only neglected the education, health, etc. Actually, it looks like he had a plan to destroy it. He had plans, because that's why doctors, educated people had to leave the country. I mean, before we come to this year, more public toilet about the Libyans.
Yes.
Going back to the previous point, what he did with education, with hospitals, etc. One day, this Gaddafi said the country should not be ruled by anybody. That's what he said. There should be no ruler. We are all rulers, which the liar meant only him, right? Then he set up what you call revolutionary committees, right? He said, you are ruling the countries. And they were just probably uneducated henchmen that support him because they always support whoever pay them, right? He said to them, you must go and take over the universities. The university should not be run by professors and administrators. It should be run by the people. And we're talking about the professors and administrators.
Brother, can I just open brackets? When you say people, it's about security service, isn't it? Security, military.
It must be. No, he set up next to the security service, he set up revolutionary committees.
Okay.
These are committees from every street, etc., every locality. They bring a few people who support him, whatever he says, and those who are leading the destruction of the country. Look, I'll give you an example of what those people did. He said, you go over, it's not the security people, no, that's another revolutionary, one of his dreams, that it should be run by revolutionary committees.
Okay.
So they decided to take over the universities. The universities should be run by the people, as if it was run by Israelis or Italians or French. It was run by Libyans. So they went, those gangs, you know what they did? They destroyed the universities, the laboratories, beat up the teachers, and they were in charge. That was his plan. That was his plan for the people to rule. I mean, in Libya, big country like this, for 42 years, I'm just going through statistics now, but in description rather than numbers. Do you remember, as I said earlier, there was no public toilet in the whole of Libya. There's no public transport in Libya. There's no bus stop or buses in the whole of the country. Even the poorest country in the world, they have buses. Northern Africa, South America, Libya had no bus service. He never ever thought about it, right? Hospitals and schools were not given probably hardly any money. So as in no maintenance, no development, they were just falling apart. And Libyans actually, they had to go to neighboring countries or even to Jordan or to Europe if they can afford it to seek treatment. Again, as we've seen some streets before from the picture, you see no maintenance of no new roads, no maintenance of the roads. Probably 1 or 2 roads just for him and his army to move around. And again, the medical, as I said, people had to go to abroad.
Yes, they had a problem with
3,000 doctors in England, and you hardly any doctors in Tripoli.
And a problem with the medicine as well and everything, yeah.
Yeah. Now, again, he discarded the army altogether. He was buying a lot of equipments, billions of dollars he spent on buying equipment, especially from Russia. But the army personnel were left poor, humiliated, with no wages, something that he and his sons said after, we should have taken better care of the army to defend us. But the army wasn't there to defend them. That's why when the revolution came, they had to make a contract with the Israelis to bring mercenaries from Africa. It was a $5 billion contract. They brought thousands of people there. We'll come to this later. Mercenaries who were shooting at people, really. And what they're shooting is special bullets. It's called dum-dum bullets, that when they hit the body, they explode, so that the damage is done. The damage done is permanent. And hundreds of Libyans not only were injured, but their parts of the body where these bullets exploded were maimed for life. Gaddafi as well had many dreams to make Libya as an industrial country. So he had projects like said, we should wear our own, whatever clothes we manufactured. So he had big factories for textile, and there's no wool or cotton there, no raw material. And like that, he had project even to make cars, to projects for chemical, biological, etc. But for each project that he had, he spent millions, and then the project fails and disappear, and just one more disappointment for the Libyan people. One good thing about him, the only thing good about Gaddafi, that he banned the sales of alcohol in Libya. I'm gonna give him that. That's the only positive thing that but in return, because there was no care of the socially of the people, either in schools or through the media, the people, the bad people around him managed to smuggle drugs. They became a lot of drug dealers, probably army officers or security officers. So there was wide use of drugs. No alcohol available, but drugs available there. So more than probably a million or probably more Libyans had to flee the country. Whoever could make it out, really, he went out. They say that the biggest Libyan community outside Libya is in Manchester, right? Now, his sons grew up. He had about 6 or 7 sons, and they were all corrupt. And they, like their father, and even worse, they had free access to all the wealth of the country. One of his sons, I don't know, called Saadi, he fancied to play football. He thought he was a footballer. He bought a position for himself with one of the Italian teams, I don't know which one, and he had to pay them, to bribe them with millions. And he played 1 or 2 games, and then they found him no fit. It wasn't good, but the millions have gone. Other sons as well, spending lavishly on parties, plus smuggling, taking money, not smuggling, taking money out to European, Swiss and American banks, depositing in there. So his sons really, and the people around him, really, they were making the best out of the whole country's revenues. And the people saw nothing from this, right? Those sons later, when it came to fighting, they did fight for their father, and they're still fighting long after he died, right? So when the people revolted against this, they've had enough people, right, as I said, and they saw the success of the revolution in Tunisia and in Egypt, where 2 dictators were ousted, right? The forces started. I remember he made once a prophecy. That's Gaddafi's prophecy, right? He made it when he was secure. He said, when the people revolt, there's no force to stop them. He said that one day, and somebody recorded it. So this time the people revolted, and probably he felt that the end is very near. Okay, I said, many of them died, really thousands have died. I mean, thousands, whether in Tripoli, Benghazi, Misrata, and people they showed a lot of heroism, fighting back. They just felt that there's no way back now, even if it cost us our lives. I must admit, the Libyans probably one of the most courageous people in the Arab world. They just decided, once that's it now, we woke up and we're not going back to that prison anymore. They kept fighting at great losses, really, but great sacrifices. But give them that, mashallah, they did manage after about from February till, or from March till February or March, it started till October till they got rid of him. Some 8-9 months they got rid of him. And they managed to get hold of him. This is the end of Gaddafi. They found him hiding somewhere in some sewage pipes, or not pipe, what you call it, bunkers, and they killed him, and they stuck a heavy stick at his backside. So now he's gone, you think that, okay, now the country should settle and start developing itself. There were no qualified people to run the country. There was no political institutions. There was no parties. People had no experience. So the system, and Gaddafi's sons, whoever survived, 2 or 3 were killed defending their father. The system, like Egypt, like they did in Egypt, and they're doing now in Tunisia, the system, the old system, fought back now. They've lost the country. They know that they cannot go back. So what they did, they started now causing a lot of troubles. and the trouble that they're causing there, military trouble. They reorganize themselves, and some outside power will come to that, start helping them, and they have managed. They brought an old man called Khalifa Haftar from. He was a general, he was an army officer during Gaddafi time, but he lost badly in a mission. He sent them to Chad. So the man ran away to America, and then after the revolution, he came and claimed to be one of them, but then he took over the army in eastern Libya, and with the help of those three evil men, the two other evil men, this is Khalifa Haftar, the one on the left, right? And with Zayed, this is Mohammed bin Zayed, and Sisi, and other countries as well, like France and Russia. They were trying to revive Gaddafi's time. Not that they liked Gaddafi, not that they, no, they're just trying to ruin the country. That's what's the idea. That's the whole idea came from Syria, when the people of Hafez al-Assad said, or Bashar al-Assad said, Al-Assad aw nahriq al-balad. Either our leader or will burn down the country. And that's what they're doing really, whether in Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, and the whole of the Arab world. And even the Arab leaders that there was no revolution in, like Jordan, etc., they always remind people, look what happened to Syria. That means if you revolt against us, we will burn down the country. We will kill all of you. So those now, this bin Zayed is financing a counter-revolution, and the Sisi is helping them with military hardware and training, etc., and his air force, and led by this Haftar on the left. And there's only one aim, to inflict as much casualties and losses on the Libyan people and buildings and the infrastructure of the country. There's no infrastructure there. So wherever this Haftar went, Benghazi, he destroyed it. He came then he managed with the money, and he had a lot of it, and the support, as I said, of Sisi, France, Russia. They're sending him a lot. I mean, at one time, this Sisi sent him some 20 containers of weapons. This bin Zayed is sending him on a daily basis airplanes full of weapons. They're employing tens of thousands of Sudanese and African mercenaries. So the money is no issue to them. And they just kept causing so much problem that they took over about 3/4 of Libya, really, right? And it looks like even Tripoli is about to fall in their hands till this great man of Islam came forward and decided to interfere. And
the Turkey was actually.
As I'm saying, this man came.
He didn't come. He was invited by transition government.
Yeah, okay, I'm not saying he invited himself, but then they sought his help. By at the time was the president who just left now, Sarraj, that this man, as a good man, Erdogan, decided to help. He sent his forces to train the Libyan army. He sent his aircraft, the Berkdar, which is the most famous nowadays in the world, and they made a big difference. To start with, they have broken up the siege of Tripoli. Tripoli was besieged for about 2 years. And during those 2 years, they were shelling the city indiscriminately. They were shelling non-stop. So with a lot
of innocent people.
A lot of innocent people really died, really. And many buildings were destroyed. They were just, as I said, indiscriminately, they were shelling the city, but they broke off this, and then they took all of the west of Libya up to the middle of Libya to a city called Sirte, right? So without him, probably the revolution would have again probably died, and then they would. I don't think anybody else could come, because the Libyans are not subdued, are not afraid of the government anymore. The Libyans in general, they will not accept this. I have to add to the list of the criminals who's behind this, Gaddafi's sons. The Gaddafi sons are still active but from behind the scene. I mean,
they are actually in Egypt, isn't it?
They're in different countries. One of them in Egypt, one of them in Africa, one of them in Lebanon in prison. But they are still active, but we don't know how. And one of them has disappeared. and then about two or three of them were killed. So this is the end of my show. So now lately, okay, we'll have to say through some positive news. Lately, after negotiations that lasted about 5 or 6 years, ongoing negotiations between different parties, because at one time they had 2 parliaments, 2 armies, they have agreed to form a unity government, right? Led by a man called Dbeba. I don't know this man. Let's hope he is good. Although, for the record, his brother or his cousin was one of the biggest thieves during Gaddafi time. But ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. I don't know about him. I don't accuse him of anything. He's not responsible for what his cousin did. But only time will prove whether this man is corrupt or not. But it looks like is a positive move the Libyans had, and they deserve it really. They're good people and they deserve better life in this life and in the hereafter.
Right. I think, you spoke about, mashallah, jazakallahu khair for this. It's brief. I think you can go on the details, but we don't have time for that. But inshallah, people can search this by themselves, learn about themselves, and bring evidence as well. And because still a lot of people are actually eyewitness, and then they give you feedback as well. What I want you to know that, during the revolution, and as you said, a lot of the thousands of people were actually in the community in Manchester here, Libyan as well. And of course, they were settled, some of them refugees, some doctors, they came for studying and then they stayed because the situation was bad, as you said it. And of course, when the revolution took place, the International Union of Muslim Scholars, he put 7 action points for people who got rid of the actual Al-Gaddafi and his regime and everything.
Yes. And
they put 7. Did you know about those 7 action plans?
No, actually, this is the first time.
I remind you about this because you have spoke about them in different ways. First, he said, 1, the Libyan people, whether they are with or against the regime, are Muslims.
Yes.
Therefore, don't kill Muslims. Why? Because they produce some groups who produce an opinion that those who were with Al-Gaddafi are apostate.
Murtaddin.
Okay? So therefore, this is one, because this rule is very dangerous, is very strong, is very, very, very big, and this is happening everywhere where there's Muslim conflicts, because the rule of getting somebody from Islam is a very strong rule. It cannot be decided by one person. It has to be a court, a judge, a lot of things. Yeah. There was a procedure to do that. You cannot do it by just, I feel this one is against me or something. I can get him out of the fold of Islam. Very big one. 2, they said, all the government or the state belongings are endowments. Therefore, we have to protect those buildings. 3, do not destroy the institutions. The army. We go and we find now some popular uprising, like in Algeria. They say we are against the army. You're not against the army. The army is an institution. You are against individuals within the army. You have to differentiate. You said here, you spoke more. You mentioned the name of Gaddafi more than anything else, because he was the institution.
He was.
Yes, and therefore, when he collapsed, everything collapsed with him.
True.
Because, as you said it before, we have institutions. They are not actually serving the citizens of their country like we see in the West. They serve the citizens. They are their institution. The parliament, the queen, the royal family, all the institutions. The House of Lords. All the organization, the companies, everything, they are services. 80% are services, and they serve the population which is here. Therefore, they said to them, please conserve the institutions, especially the arm, and especially they said the arms. Don't let it go out, because if it goes out, you don't know where is it.
True, yeah.
Therefore, what happened now? And four, they spoke about the transitional government, setting up the constitution, the election of whatever president, and of course a parliament as well, and of course making sure that all people who live in Libya and those outside Libya should be taking account of their voting, everything, and their international laws and everything. You spoke about what happened and the revolution. You mentioned names of people. You know, in Syria, they said in Syria, for example, there is 16 foreign interference in the conflict.
Right.
And you said about 16, therefore everybody comes with their interest. And who is losing interest? It's the Libyans and themselves.
Okay.
Like if the French came, the United States,
The
UK, Italian, Russians, and everything. They are very pragmatic. I don't blame them for that. They are looking for out of their interest. Of course, there's ethical and moral things. We cannot be with this. When you spoke about the, the effort, I have here a report, Libya, religious sector and peaceful building effort. The summary, I give you the summary.
Okay.
He said, since the Libyan political accord was signed in December 2015 in Switzerland, the country has had three governments. Religious discourse has become both politicized and source of polarization. 2, interviews conducted in 2014 and 2006 indicate that traditional religious actors could play a constructive role in mediation, reconciliation, and the democratic transition. 3, the most influential religious orientation were either as the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic movement, jihadism, and Salafism.
Okay.
They said, the survey suggests that these are complex, overlapping, and dynamic. 4, difference in beliefs do not necessarily predict who armed groups will fight for, with or against. Local experiences, interests are more influential. The most influential Libyan leaders in terms of religion were as the Grand Mufti, Sadiq al-Gharyani,
yes.
Ali al-Salabi, Dr. Ali al-Salabi, and Abdul Hakim Bilhaj. In 2014, 2 in 3 respondents thought that these leaders had a negative influence on peace and justice. By 2016, 9 in 10 did. More than 150 other religious actors were also named as influential. 93% of them local, indicating a healthy diversity of decentralized religious leadership. Next, most respondents felt that the Grand Mufti and his Fatwa Council were inappropriately engaging in partisan politics. Take this point because I want to come to it now. Despite such views, Libyan political parties still believe that religion has a role to play in public life, and that Sharia, the Islamic jurisprudence, should be reflected in the constitution. 3 points before last, a majority of respondents in both 2014 and 2016 felt that traditional religious leaders could play a positive role in calling Libyans to democratic transitions. Joint tribal and traditional religion leaders mediation is perceived to be the most effective form of local dispute resolution. Last one, given the potential for religious actors to promote democracy and reconciliation, the international community should engage and support constructive religious leaders and institutions.
Right. Only one thing about the international community.
Yes.
That on paper, listening to them, they sound very positive and very pragmatic.
And very civilized.
Very civilized, but in reality, whenever they interfere, they make things worse. Now, in general, the Libyan people are religious people. And I'll tell you the truth, in the 60s, they were not religious. And in the 70s, they were not religious. What made them religious is Gaddafi. Not intentionally, because he fought Islam and people resorted back to Islam. Believe me, right? He made Islam his target. All the people who were not religious.
Because he took freedom away, took everything.
Everything. No, he was attacking Islam, really. He attacking Islam. I mean, I haven't mentioned this before, but Gaddafi was challenging Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said he came from the desert, I came from the desert. He was a shepherd, I was a shepherd. He was comparing himself to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He even challenged the Quran.
قل هو الله أحد قل أعوذ بربي فلق قل أعوذ برب الناس and all this.
Yes, I mean, challenge the Quran. And then one instant, the other instant says he prayed Asr, 1 rak'ah. He said, who said 54 rak'ahs? The man just wanted to challenge anything. He thought himself as the new prophet, really, of Arabia. That's what.
Therefore, I think what we say between brackets is mentally he wasn't fit.
Yeah, true. But now coming to this international community, etc., when they deal with us, they just give us this, as if we are short of people who have ideas. So they always talk about religious extremism, jihadists, Salafis, but they
terrorism and all this.
Liberal extremism. They don't, and the liberals are the most extreme nowadays. It's the liberals who are leading the fight against the Arab Spring. Is the secularists. Those are the extremist ones. Those are the ones who kill. Those are the ones who imprison. Those are the ones who steal the money. Nowadays in Libya, all they have to do is just announce it's the Muslim Brotherhood, it's the Muslim extremist. I was in Libya in 2015 and 16. I was there for some time, and people were attacking Muslim Brotherhood all the time. I said, why? They only had 2 or 3 MPs. Out of about 100 MPs, they had 2 or 3 MPs. But it's a way to attack Islam. It's a way, actually not to attack, it's a way to attack the country, right? Because worldwide now, because of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, you look a moderate person, if you attack extremist Islam, right?
And Abu Bashir,
we don't believe there's extremist Islam, really. It's a term that they have made, and the international media took it up, right? But coming to those international mediators, etc., we don't need them. There are enough educated Libyans. There are enough Libyan thinkers to solve their own problems. The Libyan problem is the interference from the countries around them, from the, as I said, Egypt,
foreign interference.
That's it. They don't want them, and this is happening not there, happening everywhere, happening in Yemen, we're coming about Yemen next week, but it's happening everywhere, that people don't want the Arabs to rise. They don't want them to be independent, as simple as this. There are people who are afraid of this. Our own people who could lose, the rulers. Why the rulers are afraid of that? Because of their record. Their record is so bad that they know in a democracy they'll be brought to justice. There's so much blood on their hands. There's so much theft, billions and billions, the whole country. So these people are leading the war against the Arab people, and they are held by international power who doesn't want to see a superpower in the Middle East.
And when you spoke about Islamic movement, and that report is actually this report about Libya, religious sector and peace building effort, they spoke about, how they want civil democratic House of Representatives, the General National Congress, and all these kind of things. One thing which you have mentioned, and you spoke about it indirectly, is why they actually in any conflict, they arm, some groups who are less educated and less aware of the West, in general, and less aware about democracy, how the democratic process, about democracy, when we talk about it, is a process by which between brackets, now we have it in Islam, is about consultation, shura. You know shura? We in the shura, between democracy and the shura, is that Allah has wrote alcohol is prohibited. Yeah?
Yes.
So therefore, in Islamic country, alcohol is prohibited. Yeah? So therefore, it should be prohibited. Therefore, there's no point a parliament comes and discuss that we should allow alcohol to come. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, because like I come from Algeria, the article number 2 in our constitution is Islam is the religion of the state.
Yes.
Yeah, is a religion of the state. Therefore, all legislation should be according to Islam. And of course, there are issues which are not very clear. Now, Islam, you know about this about 10% of clear rules in Islam are set in the Quran and Hadith. Others are left to the opinions of the experts and the scholar in economics, in law, whatever and religious people who are expert as well. So therefore, we have alcohol prohibition, drugs prohibition, very clear, you know, killing people unjustly is that, imprisoning them, all this kind of thing, intoxicating people, taking their mind off, you know, honor, you know, sexual, it has to be, relationship has to be within marriage. We don't believe on that kind of thing. And la ikraha fi din, there is no compulsion in religion. Therefore, you can respect the Prophet ﷺ, his model in Medina. He set up the Medina state on a constitution which has multi-faith, multi-religious, multilingual, multiracial society, Jews, Christian, Muslims, and Magian, isn't it? And he set up and Sabia, and he set up a state in Medina. Lakum dinukum waliya din, you have your religion, I have my religion. But if there is a foreign power coming to invade us, we have to defend ourselves. And if you don't want to become part of the army, you pay the poll tax, you know, al-jizya. That's it.
You have to be a little bit careful here.
Yes.
That the Prophet ﷺ set up a multi-faith society.
Yes.
This is it's a bit hard to take, really.
Right, go on.
Right. There is no compulsion in religion.
Yes.
That means you can have any religion you want.
Yes.
Right? We don't force you to become Muslim.
Yes.
If the people there are Muslim,
yeah,
right, you cannot, because there's no compulsion in religion, say, I want to have a different religions in Mecca and Medina.
No, because the aim is to protect the religion, of course. Yes.
He made, the Prophet ﷺ, he made exception to this rule where he said there are no two religions in Arabia. Right. This applies outside Arabia.
Because of the okay, so that's
this applies to Mecca and Medina and even to Dammam and to Riyadh. He said no two religions in Arabia. Like there's no two religions in the Vaticans, right?
Yes.
This is the center of Christianity. And you cannot have even Catholicism and Protestant there.
Protestant,
and
yes.
Again, in Arabia, he made exception. This is the base, this is the capital of Islam, the whole of Arabia, right? So there's no compulsion. That means if you go to places where there are no Muslims, do not force them to become Muslims.
Yes,
right?
And vice versa.
But the whole Arabs became Muslims during the Prophet time. Right?
Yes.
The whole of Arabia, from the borders of Jordan now, to Yemen, Oman, the whole of Arabia, really. The whole of Arabian Peninsula became Arab. Then he said, no two religions there. So as I said, that rule applies to where there are more than one religion.
Okay, therefore,
Arabia, this is different. There is no two religions in Arabia. Okay.
Because in that time as well, the world was divided in two worlds. World of Islam, where majority Muslims and Islam is ruling, and the other world was actually who was not Muslims, but they were actually fighting Islam as well. You know, like...
whether fighting or not really. I mean, in Baghdad, there were Jews and they were Christians. The same was in Syria, etc. And they were not harmed. In Andalus, in North Africa, so Muslims have never harmed non-Muslims, really, right?
And they protect them
We
Yes,
spoke
yes.
this before, that only the minority non-Muslims are only protected in Muslim Sunni areas.
Right.
But Muslims are not protected as a minority anywhere else in the world. Not only Muslims, minorities are not protected.
Right.
There's no protection for minorities in China, in India, in Burma, in Christian Europe. I mean, Europe now is not Christian,
Yes.
right? But where, like what happened in Bosnia, what thousands were killed and raped, etc. So there's no, the Muslims in Iran are not safe. The Sunnis in Iran are not safe. While the Shias in Sunni areas are safe. So what I'm saying that there is no harm of the minorities, because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever harms a minority has harmed me personally. Man adha dhimmiyan faqad adhani. This rule does not exist anywhere in the world. Minorities are protected by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Those who don't believe in Prophet Muhammad, including the Iranians, they do not protect the minorities.
Right. This question now, I think, of course, we have just now, if we look to the Libyans, if we go back to Libya now.
Yes.
Our problem, our Libya now is it's happening the same. They now have a transitional council. They approved the parliament now, and therefore they are looking on the document of the actual constitution. Yes. Now I ask you this question now.
Yes.
All the constitution of the Muslim world is, most of it, majority of it is inspired from a Western constitution, who they took it from the constitution of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, in Medina, it was the first who set up what is citizenship in the world. What is citizenship? In the state of Medina. Now, the constitution now we have the, you know, the democracy, what we say, it's a republican, presidential, you know, the French model, we have the British model, we have the American model, which have been taken from the Khilafah of Islam, system of where the United States of America has been taken for sure. Napoleon, when he went to Egypt, he took the whole fiqh of the Shafi'i. He just took Islam from it. Therefore, they helped themselves from the Islamic civilization, and they took just Islam out of it, because things are not by names, it's but what you do in them. You know, like you said, it's by what you do, it's not by names. But therefore, they took and they helped themselves of the legacy of 1,000 years of Islam in the actual, in the world where peace was prevailing. One of the example, as you mentioned it, is the Spain, Andalus, you know, Muslim Spain, how for 800 years and for 1,000 years, they thrived, and all this Renaissance, what we say, and the fifth or the third, the first revolution, when it happened, it went on the shoulder of the actual Islamic civilization. 1,000 years of Islam is missing in history. Now the question is, Brother Bashir, the Libyans are looking to a model of constitution. I ask you this question. Do you think, what is the best way to go forward? Is it a parliamentary democracy like in Britain, or the republican system like the French one?
Look, our opinions doesn't matter to these people. As long as there's a stability, as long as there's a stability in the government with any constitution, as long as there is true freedom for people to choose, we accept it. Look, when it happened in Turkey, it was very secularist, but truly they had the free choice and they chose a Muslim party, right? That's what Muslims wanted nowadays. We want true, honest democracy where you can choose whatever you want, right? That's what we want. We want the freedom to spread the word of Islam, and others let them spread whatever they have, and then winner takes all. Yes. We don't mind. But as long as there's
competition of ideas.
That's all what we want, Muslims. If we are given the opportunity to express ourselves and without violence, and the other side should not as well have the opportunity to stop us or to suppress us, that's what we want. So whatever constitution comes out from Libya, as long as I said, it gives people the freedom to organize themselves into parties, into groups, and then we need stability. That's the problem. Because they know when stability will progress, so they will make sure the enemies of Islam, including our leaders and their cronies and their children, they'll make sure there's no stability in the government in the country. That's the problem.
Okay, therefore the conflict, as long as I said before, Robert Mitchell, senator, when he was dealing with
now because it's becoming not very clear, the sound, and this is right.
Right. Okay. I think
yes.
Right. I just want to finish that one, maybe 1 minute, inshallah, too. The idea is about conflicts are sustained, and as you said, this is what happened. But you said the decision should be left to the Libyan to decide through a referendum